The moment my master, Alexander, opened the door for me, I felt the wind brush across my whiskers. I loved him and his entire family as if they were my own mother, whom I regrettably never got to meet, or at least I can't recall her face. She was undoubtedly a gray cat, just like me, though. I had received care from my masters for almost 6 years, causing me to be somewhat older than the typical cat. However, when I focused on the surroundings once more, the coolness of it made my heart feel warm. Because the wilderness was both my home and my genuine love. I could be with friends without feeling too afraid. I was keen to locate a chipmunk since I noticed a pleasant scent while strolling through squirrel territory. My master's meal tastes like nutrition that has been frozen and then reheated, which is why I don't like it. Fresh flesh tasted far better than this. It wasn't at all fresh. I rapidly moved past the lone beetle as I crouched down on the leaf-covered ground, focusing my emerald eyes on my target. Because, as always, this would be a quest to remember. I could make this chipmunk my next meal. To be honest, I can't even remember how many of them I have hunted. I disembarked immediately after the creature, following his southward motion, while the winds whipped past my face with the swiftness of a cardinal fleeing the winter. Few individuals truly felt the exhilaration that it was. My food was pursued for a considerable amount of time. I got upset when he entered a small log and repeatedly struck it with my paw in the hopes that it would be sufficient. The beast started to flail away once more after taking roughly 4 blows. It's likely that he was attempting to regain his breath, which is not something I often do. I am not tired when I gallop for miles, just like my lioness cousin. I knew it was my chance to attack and leaped straight on top of the target when he went to the right to hide behind some bushes. Biting into his neck and breaking it like a nut, it reached his upper body. The creature's convulsions made me feel a little depressed. It was only in my nature to kill this chipmunk. I didn't relish doing it. A means to connect with my wild side and as a kind of gratification to my forefathers. I plunged my fangs into his body and made a promise to him that nothing would go to waste before eating its organs. As I reached his chest region to finish, I noticed an odd fragrance coming from a few meters away. It had a fearsome and clean scent. I watched in disbelief as the nearby trees abruptly stopped having life and the birds took off. All of the chirping around me was now muffled. So I decided to look into it out of curiosity. It was horrifying to see the source of the odor as I dashed toward the smell. The body was covered in red blood, and when I noticed some clean spots, it was clear that the details pointed to a dog. The brown markings on her stomach, the white paws with her claws still in place, and the whiskers jetting out of her face. Obviously, I could tell it was a female. The cuts, which extended from the poor creature's knee to her neck region, resembled a knife, indicating that she had been slain recently rather than pursued. I was resolved to track down the murderer who was close by. I licked my fellow feline after placing my paw on her, allowing her to experience the comforting embrace of a feline in the afterlife. I breathed in and detected the scent that was prominent across the large forest, but fortunately, a cat's sense of smell was extraordinary. Only surpassed by those vicious canines. Going through the fragrance patterns brought me to a place I didn't know too much about. My nose flared up at the smell that came from them, and it was much louder than the surroundings. It also seemed like the lights were moving very quickly. It was altered, but still natural. Similar to the meals that my masters give me. Whatever it was, mankind had tampered with it. After leaving the area around this weird location, sadly, the aroma vanished. Fortunately, my companion, a raccoon, showed up. I had come to refer to him as a scavenger since, well, that's what he was. Not a fly could get away from him. But it was unexpected that he would show up so early. His species doesn't typically show up until the evening. He turned to face me, holding something that smelled really, really nice. His visage was typical of a raccoon, however, he had a little less weight than most. Not to mention, he never really told me anything, and I never inquired where he got the chain mark on his leg. I made an effort to keep it to myself. Happy Easter, everyone. When he finished his dinner, he murmured excitedly while wagging his whiskers. Good afternoon, my friend. I gave him a long, silent look before opening my eyes and saying hello. I appreciate you reminding me that today is Humans' Day of Costumes. This is the reason a family member of mine at home was giddy with excitement and wouldn't stop talking about it. Except for when he cleared his throat. Indeed, Midnight expressed it well. As he said, that means free candy for us. He bared his teeth. I hope your friend recovers. Similarly, he has a clean soul. The scavenger then kicked over a second chocolate that was wrapped in green plastic. He offered some to me as well, but I graciously declined. I wanted to find out more about what had happened to my unfortunate brothers and sisters. Has there been an odd fragrance at this place lately? Something strong and acidic? Yes, for a long time. In fact, it began back in May. He was rubbing his silver hair as he talked with assurance. What? Since May? I abruptly cut him off, saying, "This isn't possible. How come you didn't inform me about this?" "I guess you're correct, but I knew you wouldn't behave this way. Currently, there have likely been 6 or 7 occurrences. You know, poor things, yeah, this defies logic in any way. Why hadn't I been able to detect the aroma sooner? Could you lead me to the most recent victim?" I quickly blinked in response. "I have to catch this monster." "Indeed, but that's all. Come on, I find this kind of stuff creepy." He turned to face me, still munching another piece of chocolate. He left his nest of chocolates behind as we both headed in the direction of the scent, which was really bothering me. We strolled through the forest for 30 minutes, saying hello to all of the gloomy-looking birds. We were greeted and informed about the most recent incident by our friend, Blue Jay. How it frightened him and how it made him return home an hour later. He also warned us to avoid any people who could show up because they would be considerably wilder and more excited today. We agreed, sent him our best wishes, and drove off. Scavenger paused, caressed his furry neck, glanced in my direction, and then said, very quietly, "Be careful, Midnight, this is a most gruesome sight." He sprinted quickly back to the safe side. After saying thank you to him, I entered a scene that included leafless bushes and an ancient, worn hammock affixed to an ancient oak tree. In parallel with that was the spectacle that Scavenger had warned me about. A gray cat similar to myself was killed, and his insides were all over the place. I don't want to share any more of it with you. My brother's underdeveloped teeth gave him a young appearance. Then, with courage, I approached the dead and placed my paw on him as well as licked his head. All I need right now is his foul fragrance. Meowing loudly for this merciless killer was not getting away from me this time. I vowed to exact revenge on my brother and all of my other feline friends. I was sick to my stomach and wanted to remember Alexander, my human brother, as I was leaving. He would tenderly pet and feed me every day. Like Ben, his heart felt pure, and his love for me was unwavering. I could not compare them to this killer, even though I tried. I now see exactly why animals dread people so much, how one race may be so drastically different from the other. That behavior is only exacerbated by this monster. After following the fragrance for approximately an hour, I found myself in a neighborhood that was entirely unfamiliar to me. I saw trick-or-treaters attempting to acquire candy. I then wondered where Alexander was, and I sent him my best wishes. I dashed behind one of these houses, swiftly reaching a large wooden fence that would not be difficult to jump over. When she landed on the ground, it was covered in leaves. The smell was more powerful than before, and I became determined to find the location and track down this monster so he would have to face justice for his crimes, until I arrived at an odd-looking hut that had the same bad stench coming from the garage. Although I knew I had found my target, I must admit that I was terrified since I knew this would not be your typical chipmunk. It was going to a human, and not just any ordinary human, but a vicious human with a demon's heart. After gathering myself, I stealthily made my way to the garage. I noticed a big tool shed and an old blue automobile with rust all around it when I peered into the garage. Everything seemed regular until I noticed the murderer standing next to a bloody chainsaw and many blades. Even though all I could see of him was his back, it was enough to make my tail wag. He had an extremely pale complexion and a very bony spine. The real source of the aroma was the desk he was working at. I saw my brother's corpse there and knew that if I allowed my feelings to get the better of me, I would be ripped to pieces. I stepped warily beside the leaf mounds in front of the shack. I heard the murderer laugh, and his voice had the tone of someone who had smoked a lot too much. He had blood on his hands, which I could also see. I was aware that it would be better to ambush him. So, without giving it any consideration, I advanced and attacked him. Sadly, he turned back and tried to chop off my head with his razor-sharp ear. A blood-stained 9-inch knife was in his right hand. "Oh. Hi, my dear little kitty. Welcome to my humble dwelling," he said in a clownish accent. I saw his old, stiff white t-shirt and dark apron, filled with agony. His hair had an oily, greasy hue, and his eyes were brown. He was about 40 years old, but, to be honest, I didn't mind. All I want is for him to hear what I'm saying so that I can express to him how much I've grown to detest him. Since his deeds were unforgivable and unforgettable, in any case, I simply made the decision to hiss as loudly as possible. He let out a screech like a harpy one, snarled back at me, and chuckled. Having another toy to play with at such a young age surprised me. Before he said anything, he hissed at me, laughed, and shrieked like a harpy. I told myself to be strong and not to be afraid. Knowing what my responsibility was for today, I dilated my pupils, trying to hit him as I remembered all those poor animals he killed. I landed on his face and scratched the area around his jaw and chin. He threw me off with his dirty hands after I nearly got him in the eyes. He had an odor that I could smell, and it wasn't just blood, it was pure evil. Well, there was a fight there. As he spoke, the man grinned and showed off his bright teeth. He had the voice of a man from the Western films that Alexander occasionally saw. I gave him another hiss before he yelled, "You want to know why I now choose animals over people? Because it's simpler to hide my tracks when I kill you guys than it is to kill people. Not to mention that, even if it's against the law, I never have to worry about going to jail. I've never heard of someone being executed for killing animals. Hell, I swear, they inflicted more defensive damage on me than any human I've hunted in a long time. Is it not something?" He was giggling uncontrollably after speaking. I couldn't believe he was also a murderer when he told me this. He would kill them with the same callous disregard that he showed my brothers and sisters. However, I guess I shouldn't be shocked. After all, I'm dealing with a lunatic. Although they do claim to begin with animals before moving on to people, he chose to manipulate the situation this time. The madman tried to harm me with his knife, but I sprang out of the way and bit his hand, making him scream in pain. He suffered like his victims did, and I liked that. I leaped on his chest and gave him severe scratches. He was attempting to grab his chainsaw, but I bit his wrist. At that moment, all he was doing was smiling, which made me briefly fearful. I repeatedly scratched at him while I was on his body. I did this while mauling his face up. He was simply lying there on the sodden earth. "Please, mercy, mercy." You understood me, the serial killer cowered in sheer terror as he begged. I felt so angry and hostile toward him at that moment that I nearly wanted to harm him. But that's when I thought of my friends and family, to put an end to his reign of terror on this planet forever. How would they feel and respond if they were in this situation? I didn't want to turn into a monster like this man, so I couldn't take that chance. I just got everything off his chest and did what I felt was proper. As I was leaving, I could still hear his laughter on the ground where he was bleeding. I sensed the land was revitalized as soon as I returned to the forest. An evil force has been permanently vanquished from this location. Even though evening was approaching, I could still hear birds chirping frantically. I claimed ownership of the area. In addition, I hoped to myself that the monster would quit harming other cats. I did, truly. But I hoped that the authorities would put an end to him permanently if he began harming people once more. Since it is not my destiny or my duty, all that matters to me are the forests and my family. I saw Scavenger again as soon as I got into the region of lights. He approached me, and we gave each other hugs. The forest feels better. Is this ordeal done? He won't ever harm us again. I swear. I licked my lips in response. I'm grateful, Midnight. As he scratched me, the raccoon spoke. Thank you. We can all sleep better at night. Good luck with your evening. Warmest regards to your kin. Thank you as well, my friend. If I had to do it over, I would. We said our goodbyes. My family had been greatly missed. Today, I put my life in danger, but I made it through. But instead of returning home immediately, for a while, I wanted to explore my region. In the end, it was a new moon. It sounds ideal to me that I'll be home in a few hours.